So today it's awesome to meet Ben Wright, who's the founding coach at Sales Impact Academy and a B2B startup consultant. Ben's got years of experience, marketing, sales, product leadership, and he leads the SIA course for managing the complete sales cycle. So welcome to the show, Ben. Great to have you on.
Thanks, Tom. Great to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great to meet you. We usually start with a fun fact, and I've actually had a different one, but we found out one just chatting there that we have both actually lived in the US for the same amount of time, 5 years, which is uncanny, really.
Different sides of the country. I was on West Coast. I think you said you're on the East Coast.
Yeah. So obviously you've got so much experience working in tech for like 30 years, but what took you over to the US?
Good question. I was working for Oracle in the UK at the time, and I was fortunate enough to get offered a job in the product management team at headquarters in Redwood Shores. So didn't have anything to tie me down at the time, so took it and ended up spending 5 years there working for a couple of different companies.
Yeah. Did you feel that you accelerated your learning in tech and B2B just being there? Like the whole way it works over there is just so different, isn't it?
Yeah, massively. I thought I worked hard in the UK until I went over and worked for Oracle in the States and then realized what hard work was. But then I left Oracle and joined a startup, and then I really realized what hard work was. So there's a couple of different learning curves going on in the US.
Yeah, the concept of taking long leave in the States just doesn't exist, does it? You know, long weekend is, I'm going on vacation. I'm going Friday morning. I'll be back Monday afternoon. Yeah, it's like, that's my vacation. Whatever. How did the SIA course come about then? I'm always interested to learn about that. So how did it come about for you?
Yeah, so I got to know Paul. We've got a little group of consultants that sort of work in London, and we sort of had before the pandemic, we were having sort of lunches every sort of month or 6 weeks, and he just came along to one of those lunches, and Paul just started talking about this idea that he had for Sales Impact Academy over this lunch, and just like a light bulb went off in my head in terms of the problem that he was trying to solve, and the way that he was trying to solve it was quite unique. And so I sort of grabbed him and pulled him to one side after the lunch, and I said, tell me how we can work together. And then it just came out of that. And me, him, Alex, and Tom Glasson, who's my co-coach on managing the complete sales cycle, we'd knocked a few ideas around, and then we came up with this sort of model of, how can we create a course that salespeople could go on where we could help them understand some of the best practices that we've used and seen over our careers at every single stage of the sales cycle. And that sort of the name Managing the Complete Sales Cycle just sort of came out of that discussion.
Going back to your other point, like I think there's sales is, I've been doing it for 20 years, you've been doing it for 30 years. Like it's such an uneducated space but it's so challenging and so hard, right? So people are constantly learning on the job. So what SIA is doing to educate salespeople and, even our space and industry as well, just making coaching accessible and making it happen. So much is happening in the last sort of 3 to 5 years around, salespeople being able to really improve. And, I think it will lead to having to have an accreditation one day to sell, and being able to pick that up and go, look, I can do this here and I can do that. But you can see where it's going, right?
Yeah, totally. And if you think about, I've had this experience, you have, Paul's had, Tom's had, we've all made it up as we've gone along, right? Everything that we know about how to do our jobs, we've learned on the job by making mistakes or just watching what other people do. And so, I suppose that's the starting point of Sales Impact Academy in a way, is that if you look at all the non-commercial jobs, so your HR people, your finance, your accountants, your lawyers, even your software developers, they've got structured education options from the age of 18, right? You can go do a degree, you can do a master's. Some of those jobs you need professional continuous development. But then you look at the commercial go-to-market teams, there's nothing. There is zero education options. I can go and do a degree in Latin and history and classics, which are great degrees. I've got nothing against those, but I can't do a degree that would actually set me up for success in one of the fastest growing industries in the world, let alone in the country. It's a travesty of the education system, and that's sort of our starting point really as a business.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about something you love about the subject, and we can dive into there.
I think the thing that I love about the course is that we're having a real impact on people's jobs, their careers and their lives. I quite often get notes on LinkedIn after people have taken the course, or a couple of months later, with people just telling me how much it's been, it's impacted them, being able to learn in that kind of way. One of the things that we really try and do in every single one of those classes was breaking down the sales cycle, as we try and offer practical insights that you can implement straight away to improve the way that you sell and improve your conversion rates at every stage of the deal, but also improve your mindset of how you approach your job as a salesperson as well. So I think that's probably the thing that I love most about the course, is being able to deliver that kind of impact for people.
I love that thing you said there about like taking away practical things you can implement tomorrow, because whether you're reading a blog or you know, it could be an article or whatever, a lot of the time it doesn't really go into how you do it. You know, so, or you know, actually what you're doing and how you're doing it, and it can be sometimes quite high level. And I read things that are meant to educate in our space, and I think, well, you know, but how and why? And I think that if your course is doing that and really giving people tangible examples of what they can go away and implement against their deals and in their day-to-day selling, then that's awesome. That's great.
I think that in a way, that's the other benefit. Our primary teaching pedagogy is that we teach live. You can catch up on demand if you want to, but our primary methodology is live. So we're here, right? So I think that ability to access the coach and ask questions or just drill deeper into something, I think is a real powerful part of the teaching methodology.
Yeah, it's an interesting, like from a psychological point of view, like Shelley runs a course as well. When you see the return rate on each step, she runs one called Lead Coach Win. And if you record the football on the TV, like I'm a Spurs fan, and that's painful enough anyway, we won't go into that. But like if it's live, you're just engaging and watching it in a completely different way. If it's recorded, even if I don't know why I do it, I record it, and then if I know the score, I don't watch it the same way.
Yeah. And I think the other thing about that, Tom, is like if you're watching it live, you're sort of watching it with your mates as well, right? Even if you're just chatting over WhatsApp. And I think that's the thing about that live learning as well. These teams are coming together and they're all learning the same thing at the same time. So some of the customers that we've seen that have had the best outcomes, they go on a class with us and then they all jump into a Zoom call afterwards and say, right, what did we hear on that course that really resonated with something that we think we need to improve? And they can do that together at the same time. So I think that's another benefit of doing it live, in a bit in the same way that you talk about watching the football.
Yeah, we've seen that as well. Like in my own business at Jiminy, like you can record sessions, put it in your knowledge base. But if you just take that time to run a live session, like we run for individuals, for clients, our CS team would run like how to self-coach as like a 45-minute like webinar that's interactive. And clients, like some of our larger customers, you have like 150 sales reps sign up to how to self-coach, and they want to come because they want to know how to self-assess and how to give themselves feedback. So there's all of that as well. Awesome. And something you would recommend in terms of like why would you try the course, and you know why would you encourage people to try it?
Well, I mean, why would I encourage people to try it? I guess I'd encourage people to try it because that's what we're going to do. We're going to help you at every single step of the sales cycle to learn how to do that thing better. Tom and I are both sort of sales geeks, I suppose, for one of a better way of putting it. We're really interested with the granular things that you can do at every single stage of the sales cycle to improve the way that you sell. And I suppose if I had to think about one area out of all of the areas, it would be that I see needs improving probably the most in most sales cycles. It's discovery, right? We cover lots of different aspects of discovery in several classes on the course. We cover a lot of other stuff as well, but we get really, really granular about, for example, how to arrange and execute effective discovery calls, do deeper discovery in your meeting, and then put that discovery to work as you might be customizing your deck or your demo, as well as creating what should be hopefully compelling value propositions for your clients. So like we get into that level of detail about every single stage of the sales cycle.
You said loads of interesting stuff there, but the one thing that triggered for me is like when you said discovery, and that's the biggest place that people need help still, you know, in terms of you're managing that complete sales cycle that you're training on. 9 times out of 10, when you start to record calls and meetings and look at the sales process, everyone goes to that same point, which is how can I make qualification and discovery better? Whether it's at the BDR, SDR level of the AE, like it's the most important thing. If you get that right, that's where the deal lives or dies.
Yeah, I think that qualification piece is really important, and often that's your SDRs doing that. And then the discovery piece, as you said, like if you do poor discovery, it affects every other part of your sales process. So if I don't know what the pain is, so it's not just about understanding what is it they want to achieve, but what pain do they have today, and what's the impact of that pain, and can I monetize that impact? If you don't understand those 3 things, you've got no chance whatsoever of building a compelling value proposition that shows here's the value that we can deliver by taking that pain away and taking the impact of that pain away. But if you don't understand it in the first place, you can't build those compelling value props. So there's lots of different areas just in that one bit of the sales process that affects almost everything else that you do from that point onwards.
Yeah, classic one thread deal with one stakeholder and no one else. You don't know anyone else involved in it. Yeah, I'm sure we've all.
And you don't know what the pain is. You don't even know what it is that's impacting them. And then you wonder why the deal gets stuck further down on the sales cycle. It's a very common problem. I see it all the time when I work with sales teams.
Yeah, and more it's on to another level, I find now, because it is so competitive and there's so much noise. It does become about how you're going to solve their problem for them. I mean, it always has been anyway, but even more when you're selling over video and you can't build relationships in person, how are you really transcending that over, you might have 30 minutes and then 45 minutes to build a rapport and a relationship, as well as the same time, helping them feel like you've built trust and credibility, and then feel like you're the best vendor to help them.
Yeah, I think there's three things there. One is, markets, like every tech company is trying to carve out a new segment of market, right? So things have become so competitive. So you have to differentiate yourself in the sales cycle. And one of the ways of differentiating yourself is to not really appear like a salesperson, be much more like a consultant, sort of understanding and diagnosing and solving problems. I think the other piece is that, buyers are so much better well researched right now. So you trying to pitch them on the thing that you do, well, they probably already have some idea of that already. So you can have a much stronger resonance with somebody by not really talking about pitching what you do, but sort of pitching the problem, as it were, rather than the product. And then I think the third bit is absolutely, a lot of us are still selling remotely right now. And it's hard to build that kind of trust and rapport when you're selling. It's harder when you're selling remotely. And a real great way of building trust is just listening and asking really kind of pertinent questions, so you really understand the world that your prospects inhabits and the day-to-day pains that they've got, their department's got, and their company's got. And if you do that without trying to sell them anything, that's a really good way of building that relationship in the early stages of a sales cycle.
Yeah, awesome. So last thing, is there something you recommend in the complete sales cycle that you avoid doing?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we really talk about avoiding is that kind of, pitching the solution before you understand what the problem is, right? Mm-hmm. So it really comes back to that consultant's mindset, that beginner's mindset. How could I possibly sell you a solution to something if I don't know what the problem is? We've got this analogy in the course where Tom takes us through a sort of imagined scenario with the doctor. And it's like you walk into a doctor's surgery, the doctor kind of looks you up and down and says, great, I've seen lots of patients like you before. I know exactly what's wrong with you. Here's some medicine, go away and take that for 2 weeks and you'll be okay. Like, would you go back and see that doctor again? Would you take that medicine? Probably not. But if you had a different sort of doctor that said, oh, come in, come and sit down, tell me about what's going on with you. And you start talking about the problems and they say, oh, okay, well, how painful is that? Oh, okay, no, I really understand. I'm sorry to hear that. And how does that affect your day-to-day life? And then they start asking questions so they really understand what it is that's going on. And then they say, well, I've actually come across a few other people that have had similar problems like that. So here's what I'm going to prescribe for you in terms of solving that pain that you've got. Well, that's a doctor I'd go back and see. So that's what we sort of try and avoid, is what we call that cowboy doctor, where you just kind of prescribe before you diagnose the problem. And that's something that's really important to avoid for all the reasons that we just sort of spoke about a moment ago.
Yeah, and you probably see it when you're doing your consulting as well. When I see it with my own team, like, especially when companies are busy, like they'll try and get onto a meeting and go, right, just show me a demo. Like, and if the sales consultant or sales rep isn't as strong, they can get pushed into like that, whereas ultimately it's like, whoa, how can we work out if we can help you? How can we support you? We need to, build a relationship to understand that. And sometimes that's just the key, isn't it? But people do just sometimes, I know I'm a busy founder and sometimes I'm buying software.
Tell me how much it is. I just want to know how much it is.
But bad habits. I just know how to work my way around. I'm tech savvy. Like, a lot of the time people do that. So yeah, definitely. Cool. It's been really interesting, Ben, to chat about that. And for you personally, with your consultancy business, if anyone wanted to get in touch or chat to you about how you could help, what's the best way to do that?
Just connect with me on LinkedIn, Ben Wright. Mm-hmm. You'll find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty visible on there. So
awesome. Well, great. It's been really awesome chatting to you today. I've loved it. And I've made a new acquaintance in you, Ben, and I'll be in touch with you myself, I'm sure.
All right. Pleasure to meet you, Tom.
All right. Cheers, Ben. Bye.
Take care.